All will be found, romance and all, in the waves of obsession. The waves of obsession. The waves of obsession. The waves of obsession.
Hey, I'm Chris, and this is Waves of Obsession. Today, I get the opportunity to talk to John, and I thought we'd start off by just letting John give a brief little intro of who you are and how you got connected with me.
It kind of started with the usual YouTube. You know, I'm watching a comedian that I like, and he has Peterson come on,
Mm-hmm.
and Peterson's really interesting, and so I kind of go on that rabbit trail, and I kind of follow the thread. I go through a little bit of PVK because he's commenting on Peterson, and then Pajot, and I'm really settled with the Grail Country.
Oh
And
yeah,
with
yeah,
Chad's stream, the Friday morning stuff.
yeah.
And so I've kind of dropped in that sense Peterson, and I really liked maybe that down to earth and maybe the people who are talking about what Peterson is talking about. I like listening to those. So I'm listening to Luke, Nate, Sherry,
Right, right.
Neil, Chad,
Mm-hmm.
and you're part of that group.
Okay.
So that's how I got to you. And then your vivisection of beauty video really spoke to me, and my mind exploded, and yeah,
Cool.
that's where I'm now.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, man. Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. You know, I've been following all this stuff for a really long time, and I don't know what exactly it was. I had my little cycles of PVK where I'd really listen to a lot of it and I'd follow more episodes than I care to admit. But um, yeah, but then I kind of fall out of it a little
Oh yeah,
bit. And what happened was a very similar thing. You know, I started focusing more on Chad's channel and Grimgriz and just some of the other smaller channels. And I don't know what it is. It's just sort of the um, yeah, I don't know. It's just the smaller parts of the corner that you can actually interact with, and I just thought that was really
yeah,
appealing. So yeah, I'm glad you reached out to me. It's awesome.
yeah. I mean, I was a lurker for maybe a year or two, and Mick Mo and Alan, they're talking about the lurkers coming out, and it's like, okay, maybe I'm being called out
Yeah,
because I have all these things I'm thinking. I'm reading a lot of books, and it's just at some point it spills out, and you gotta
yeah,
talk about it. So.
man.
Uh,
I could
yeah.
almost not even be called a lurker. You could almost call me a stalker.
Yeah. Well,
No, we'll scratch
yeah.
that. But so yeah, man.
Yeah. So I want to,
Yeah, we've been going back and forth a little bit on the Discord, and you threw out a bunch of stuff. So I'm gonna kind of let you take the first punch here and run with it.
yeah. So the vivisection of beauty video, you compare the scientific, maybe like left brain, cold, distant kind of look at beauty. And then you have the right brain, which is like somebody who's living in the moment and awe, and he's crying in the video. And so it was a really nice a contrast that you put in that video that spoke to me. And I thought, how am I doing this with the Bible?
Mm,
Because I know that there's beauty there, but the way I grew up, and I grew up Christian, so grew up Christian my whole life, but I'm kind of starting at fresh because I'm kind of restarting, basically,
mm.
trying to make it my own thing. So I'm
Okay.
trying to use my own language. I don't want to get stuck in like the jargon that like I would use this Christian language all the time, but I didn't really know what it meant.
Mm.
So, um, so that's where so I'm with you on this beauty path. I'm trying to get out of the books, and I'm trying to get into the more like the dialogue and then maybe embodying it and the living it.
Okay.
Um, so this is kind of my effort um, to get into more of the beauty aspect of it. And that's kind of right now. I'm going to like a traditional church, very like a liturgical church,
Yeah.
and it's also
Okay.
waking me up
Actually,
to a lot of how I
I
used
I
to.
don't. I'll be honest. Like I hear these phrases get thrown around a lot, and I don't have any experience with it at all. In the sense that I did not grow up in the church at all. I have a very recent exposure to what the church is, and so even the term liturgy is really quite foreign to me.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
would I would put it in maybe high and low church. So like not in like in a judgmental way. Just the low church has very few, maybe very low structure, very few rituals.
mhm,
So you'll have like what I grew up as the evangelical church, which is just you have your worship songs, maybe like a concert, I guess, style, and then
mhm,
you have your sermon, right?
right.
Um, and the focus is the climax of the service is the sermon, the 1 hour, 1 hour and a half sermon, and everything kind of builds up to that. And there's maybe not much in terms of the inside the church. It's maybe you have a cross, maybe you don't. It's very low on maybe like images and stuff.
Right,
Whereas
right.
the liturgical it's almost off a script, right? So 90% of it is it's prayers, songs, verses, reading, chanting,
Okay, okay.
and then there's a lot of other things like the smoke, like the smell of it.
Mm,
They have the sleigh bells, a lot of images, a lot of to me, I put it kind of like in the right brain. It's very experiential. Like you're you're in the kind of in the moment. They're saying words, but it's very different than words in an evangelical church,
mhm.
where it's very kind of dark and very focused on what the pastor's saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean, in the liturgical, there's like a 10-minute sermon, like where
Okay,
he's kind of like he can do his thing. The rest of it is very structured.
okay, okay.
So by that's what I mean by I guess liturgy, right? So and the liturgy
Yeah,
is the
okay, okay.
focus is the climax is the communion, is the Holy Communion or the Eucharist.
Right, okay.
Um, so it's up maybe you're using your body more too. You're doing like the sign of the cross.
Right, right.
You're doing a kneeling, like a bowing.
Mhm.
So maybe I guess in some ways it's maybe Pentecostal and some more experiential in that way. But I come from a Baptist background. It's very like you sit in your chair,
Yeah,
you don't clap your hands, you don't do much of anything really. You
right.
sit there and receive the words, right?
Yeah,
And so I heard you were in a non-denominational in that estuary.
yeah,
That's your kind of experience right now.
yeah, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Um, so that's
Yeah. So,
kind of maybe
so
more my
no
background.
smoke and definitely none of
Yeah.
no smells, or at least smells you don't want to smell.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of what I'm doing right now is processing the differences. So
Yeah,
so this is where the Bible part comes because the Bible has a different priority in the two kind of ways. I see it as a much higher priority in a non-denominational evangelical or Protestant church versus
right.
a liturgical church. It's more
Okay.
like next to the traditions and the rituals and all that.
So
So,
it's a shared
uh,
union, right?
yes, they kind
Yeah.
of work together.
Hmm.
Um, so that's so I'm in my process right now. I'm coming out of that. The Bible is kind of the in the hierarchical structure. It's the top of the in a way. It's the top, and it's kind of coming down a little bit on the ladder. So I'm trying to I'm trying to put Jesus at the top
Right.
because you hear these like very subtle things like the Word of God, capital W, and they're
Yeah.
talking about the text, but I feel like they should be talking about the person
Who
because with the
just
text,
what do you mean by just to be clear? Who is they?
this is my upbringing, my evangelical
Oh, okay.
upbringing.
Okay. Sorry.
So this would be my Baptist,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
And mega churches that I've been to here and there.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, um, it's the Word of God is usually a text. It's usually the Bible, right?
Right, right.
Um, and I'm thinking more and more in my heart, it should be it should be a person. That's the word of God, right? The logos of God.
Okay.
So I'm trying to, in my mind, I'm kind of making that transition, I guess. Um, so the beauty of the Bible, because the way I see it, the way I grew up is a more scientific view of the Bible and more analytical, more historical, critical.
Okay.
Let's kind of look over it
So
and let's.
could I say this? Because this is something I hear a lot is and this is maybe more in sort of the apologetics sort of realm. I hear this term of like
Hmm.
sola scriptura. I hear that get thrown around a lot, and almost I hear a tremendous amount of generalizations, like a lot of
Yes.
generalizations, as if all whatever all Baptists think this way, or
Yes.
all Pentecost think this way, or whatever. Um, and sola scriptura seems to be one of those ones of like, the Protestants are sola scriptura and all this stuff. And I, you know, I've only heard this secondary. So just to be clear, I'm not sola scriptura, uh, but yeah, I think I kind of know where you're going a little bit here.
Well, yeah, I don't like the debate. I don't like the debate format, which is why I'm really glad that you're not like another liturgical person.
Hmm.
Because I rather, because I'm processing this stuff, so I'm
Right.
really in more like I rather just talk about it. Because I do hear that a lot of it is very debatey, and I've heard a lot of the Orthodox
Yeah.
versus Protestant stuff, and I don't really, and I think
Uh,
they're straw men on that. So I
can I
don't want
give you
to.
my quick view on this?
Yeah,
Can I,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay. So here's my generalized stance. I find Orthodox and some of the, actually even the Catholic, I find the tradition, um, I find it appealing, right? Because I agree,
Mm,
you go in the non-denominational, it is, it's concert oriented, it's for new believers. That's sort of its
mm,
purpose, right? It is catered and tailored for those people. Um, my problem is that um, I found Christ through this church, through this type of church. And so I know, me personally, through my own experience, that it has a purpose, right? It has a purpose for a certain
mm,
group of people to find Jesus, right? So I kind of look at it and I go, why isn't there one gospel, right? There's four. There's not just one.
yeah.
And my take on this is that because we need more than one type of church, because different people are at different processing, they need different stuff. And so if I was to become
Mm,
Orthodox, it would be extraordinarily selfish on my part because I'd only be doing it for myself. And all the people that I'm actually helping through my small
mm,
group and through my other discipleship work probably wouldn't happen because I wouldn't do it. But I do it through the church that I'm in right now because, you know, um, I know that it's as much of a struggle as it is. That's sort of one of the things that I know I haven't been good at, is sort of like having a hardened heart and not loving others. And so I just
mm,
fear, I have a fear that if I went to like Orthodox or even Catholicism or something, that I would probably fall back and just be another sitter in the pews or whatever, standard, whatever it might be. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
sorry, I didn't.
No, that's very good. Yeah, I appreciate that because that is, you need different places. I mean, like this online thing too is kind of kind of a.
Oh yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like it's kind of like a holding. It's a holding place for people who are kind of in between places or trying to figure stuff out, but maybe they don't feel comfortable in a church setting. Um, so yeah, I like that a lot. I'm, I need to have grace for my old self, who's
hmm,
maybe coming out of an older way of thinking, and not to shut the door and
yeah,
preach from the
yeah,
other side, like preach from the
right.
mountain.
Mm.
um, so that's why I want to talk to you about this, because I have, like I'm in my own head about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and there's a lot there with that I'm in a kind of like I'm trying to give myself reasons why I'm moving to another place, right? So I'm looking at the pros and the cons, um, and I always want to be open to to other ways that people are doing it. And the my wife is not there. I mean, it's just too strange for
Yeah.
my wife.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff. There's a lot of stuff there. Um, so yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I'm in no rush. I want to talk about it, talk it out. So the Bible is one of the big things that are kind of like
Yeah. I mean,
I'm trying to figure out
so,
what how do
so
you
for
see it maybe?
me, I see the Bible as a living being. Like to me, the
As a
Bible's
living being?
alive. Like the Bible is alive. It is like
Yes,
the
yes, yes,
living,
yes.
breathing Word of God. It's so incredibly
Yeah.
strange and almost ineffable that it perplexes me almost every time I open it. Yeah.
I want to have that. I want to have that again. because I've been reading it for so long
Mm-hmm.
that I'm just pulling out what are the facts? What are the principles? What are the
Oh,
guidelines?
okay.
What does it
Okay.
say about God? Right? Because it's kind of that systematic theology, like God is omniscient, God is omnipresent.
Right.
And then you go back to the text. So I just got this 15 minutes ago. Matthew Peugeot,
Yeah,
Jonathan
yeah.
Peugeot's brother. He's talking
Right.
about how God in Genesis is regretting, repenting that he made man and
Mm.
that he made the flood.
Hmm.
How do you fit God's omniscience with that story? That story should be surprising. It should be like, wow, what? And I want to have that strangeness again. But now I have this kind of abstract idea that's been pulled out. God is omniscient. I'm not saying he's not, but
Right.
now how do you
Right.
put that back into story? It's like
Oh
the
man,
story
you're
doesn't really make sense.
okay. You're touching on something that's been on my mind a lot actually. So one of them would be hell. Okay.
Uh,
Like I have a lot of ideas and a lot of implanted ideas about what hell is. And so, I'm no expert, I'm no biblical scholar. I haven't read the Bible front to cover. I've certainly read a number of books a great many of times, and I have a bad habit of kind of reading the ones that I like more than others. But I feel like I'm very, I don't know, like I have a novice sort of childish sort of view of like, well, what does it actually say? You know, I certainly have like the
yeah,
cultural aspect of what people tell me it says. Um, but I don't have a lot of like I don't know. It's yeah. To me, it's like there's just so many of those little cultural things. Like God being omniscient. Like what is that? What the hell is that word? Omniscient. Who even came up with it?
I don't know,
I don't either.
but it's part of my vocabulary.
Yeah, it
Like
is.
it's something I think about that I was given. Okay, so when you said hell, okay, I got goosebumps because this is my deal breaker.
Yeah.
This is the way I could come back to Christianity
Hmm.
was through finding a new way to deal with hell.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is a
Okay.
big one for me. Eschatology is my thing. I spent years on this thing. I spent tears and I've been praying about it and this books and books and books and just so eschatology is because I've been affected by the end times, right? The rapture,
Mm.
Y2K stuff, and that kind of fell apart for me. It's like, oh, so the rapture is going to be us. So,
Mm.
and then I kind of reread. I read Revelation in a different way. And then I started, and then I thought, okay, so hell is the big one for me to square away with a good God. Um, and so that's how I found my way back into Grail country specifically,
Mm.
because Sherry, Luke, Nate are universalists, right? The Christian universalists, and they're also
Oh, okay.
Orthodox.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of the reason I'm here is through my research and searching out hell is
Mm.
one huge reason I got. So that gave me goosebumps that you mentioned that topic because I've
I mean,
I've been on all the levels. I believed all the things.
I guess I'll kind of give you my first snap opinion of my current belief, and say this is this is sort of how I am. Like, I'll tell you what my current belief is. It could change. I don't know.
Yeah.
I really only know sort of what I've experienced. It's not worth poking at your stick in your eye when I got, a 4 sticking on my own. So, um, I don't know. The way I kind of understand it, the way I understand it best is hell is basically the absence of God. Essentially, it's like those who have completely rejected God, they will be completely absent from Him, and that's sort of what hell
Yeah.
is like the complete departure away from God. And maybe I don't know if the fire and these sort of things are symbolic. I'm not really sure. Um, I certainly know there's something about
Yeah.
cleansing and some other pieces to it, but it definitely seems to be just like this separation of sorts.
Yeah. That outer darkness kind of
Yeah,
imagery,
yeah.
where you put yourself out there, you put
Because
yourself in
like
outer darkness. Yeah.
those who completely reject him, it's like they'll get the very thing they've asked. They might not just have realized that it might be forever, or is it forever? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where
And I'm not a dead man,
that's
so
where
I can't tell you about things that aren't right. I mean, we're
yeah,
not.
we are
We're
speculating in the end.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I can only put so much energy into these things, um, without taking away from the beauty of the rainbow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there is definitely that absence. The the next thing I think is without God there is no life.
Mhm.
So God's got to be there somehow. He's got to be there in some way. Otherwise, I'll
Yeah.
be just annihilated, right? Because
Right.
I
Right.
used to believe in annihilation too, so I wouldn't even
Okay.
exist.
Yeah.
Um, but there is that thing where God gives you what you want, almost
Mm,
like that He backs off, and then there's that outer darkness, there's that absence, the void.
okay.
So I accept that. That idea. That's part of the whole picture of hell. I think.
Mm,
But in that space, I try to give. I can't live in that space because I assume I'm going to hell, right? Just because of how I grew up, I'm just gonna assume I'm going there. So let's think it through. Let's think it through some more because that's kind of sad. Like that's a little nihilistic for me. I don't want to stay in that
yeah.
place, and I want to give myself some hope. So I'm thinking, okay, so God is there with me. As
Mm,
Jesus descends into Hades. There's
yeah.
that idea. So okay, so maybe Jesus is with me there in some fashion. Maybe maybe he's absent to me. Maybe consciously he's absent to me, but maybe he's working on me subconsciously,
Okay.
and maybe he's going to find a way to bring me back out of that darkness. So that's where my hope comes from, I guess, um, and that's where I go from there. From that, a place I think. So hell for me is a state of it's your state of how you relate to God, I guess. And
Okay.
what I've heard was helpful is that you receive his love negatively, maybe with fire, because I don't really care if it's symbolic or not. It's painful, right? That's the point.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and if you receive it well, you receive the warmth of the love, the light, and it's love, right? It's heaven. Received wrongly, it's hell. It burns, it hurts, and maybe that's where like that purging, cleansing thing comes from. It starts to burn away things that push against God.
Right. Right.
Um, so that's how I see it. I see your picture and I kind of put it within maybe a bigger frame. Um, and that's where I'm going with hell, I guess. I don't want to say any more now than that, and
No, that's good.
because I'm
That's
not
good.
in my old days would be a preaching. I would be preaching my view, right?
Yeah.
And I want to stop myself. I don't want to debate anyone into because I know. Yeah, yeah,
It's okay because I don't
and
know anything
yeah.
anyway. So.
um, Yeah. Then let me just add some insert some hope in that
Yeah, yeah,
hell, I guess,
yeah, sure.
and leave it at that. But that for me is where
So that's your wrestle. Okay, you've been wrestling with these things
that
for a
is my
long time. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
you would
And if to come to back to God, I have to go through hell in
okay.
some way that makes sense, I guess. And so I feel like I've found something that's helpful to me that I can come back and love and worship God again, like
Mm-hmm.
look up to God as something that's worthy to me that makes sense. And Sherry, Nate, Luke, and these guys, that's what they talk about, and that's why I'm attracted to that,
Okay.
um, to that corner of the internet, I guess.
Right.
So, anyways,
Right.
that's the hell
Yeah.
tangent. I don't know if you want to keep going that direction or
Man, geez, it just I feel terrible now. So.
no. I want to go wherever you want to take it.
um. Well, I mean, well, let's see here. So, honestly, this already turned into an interesting direction, which I didn't think that it was going to. So, um, which I think is good. It's a pleasant surprise. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love when this sort of stuff happens. Um, well, let's. Well, what else is going
So you have
on?
the scientific kind of view. I mean, let me see if there's anything else I have on the because I guess I'm trying to put back the pieces of how I read the Bible, right? So you have the
Okay, yeah, yeah,
scientific kind of.
sure,
There's a way to read it lifelessly,
yeah, yeah,
and then there's a way to read it like the double rainbow guy. So I'm just going to call him the double rainbow
yeah,
guy versus the
yeah.
science guy, right?
Okay.
Um, and I have definitely known the science way,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm starting to taste a little bit of the rainbow guy, the double rainbow guy, and there's something
Okay.
more to it that
Yeah,
I can't put words to it.
yeah.
And the beauty, that's the beauty that I'm kind of. So that's where I'm a kindred spirit, I guess, on the path. I'm picking up on the beauty stuff that you're putting down, I guess. Um, I mean, so maybe how do you read the Bible, I guess, and do you vibe with that? And
Well, I think honestly,
I
I
mean,
mean,
it's
it keeps changing. Really, it keeps changing for me. Um, I'm a late life convert. Okay, I converted at the age of 36. I'm 40,
mm,
so 4 years ago.
I'm 40, 41. Yeah.
Right, so I spent my entire life as a non-believer. Never went to church. Never pushed me. Was very Actually, I was very anti-religious. Like I thought most religious people, especially Christians, were quite stupid. I sort of had that why in the hell would you believe in these stupid fairy tales, you bunch of idiots kind of vibe. And
Oh yeah.
you know, it, long story short, um, find a church, good people, get challenged to read the Bible. Read the Bible. I read
Yeah.
the Book of John. Okay, the Book of John is the first one I really started reading through, and there were just certain pieces of it which challenged all of my assumptions of, well, this is a really silly way for people to control other people, right? It asks you to do some extraordinary things that if I was going to write a book, if I was going to write a fake book that was going to be used to control other people, I sure as hell wouldn't tell them the world's going to hate you and you're going to have to pick up this cross every day and drag it around, right? It's so there was just
Yeah.
there was just things about it that just kind of really, and it comes back to, it's sort of like, where did I get that from? I got it from the culture. I didn't get it from myself. And it wasn't until I read the book myself did I see all that. And of course, I'm like, okay, well,
Mm,
I'm reading all the other books. And then it really was the book of Ecclesiastes that kind of
yes.
was the gut punch for me. I must have read it 30, 40 times. I don't know how many times I read it. But I basically had this sort of, honestly, Like I felt like they were my own words because it just so closely mirrored how I thought about everything. And even the
This is the ashes
transition.
to ashes. It's all
Yeah, it's all,
it's
well,
all
it's just like you get to a certain point where
pointless.
you're just like, drink, have fun, be merry, all this sort of stuff. Toil in all your work. That's all you're going to do anyways. Um, but then eventually you get to the point where it's like, at the end of the day, you just need to trust in God because there's nothing better to do. Right? It's that's sort of the moral of the story. Is
Yeah.
that you as a person are never going to figure this out because how deep is deep? It's too deep. You'll never find it. Like there is no bottom. And I almost
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
the toiling is, this is where the whole science thing comes in too. It's like there will always be another solar system to find because God will make sure of it. Like they'll never find the always will be another one. There'll be another proton. There'll be another whatever. It doesn't matter. There'll be no end to it because there is no end to it because we're supposed to toil because we're fallen
Yeah.
and it's just like this is our lot and we have to live it and deal with it. And so he wants us to love him and love others. Like that's what we're supposed to do. And it's so damn hard. It's so hard to do it. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And now when I read it, I'm really trying to take the position of, don't take it so well. For one, I try to put myself in the who wrote this, why, when, what were they thinking, how did they think? Because I know the language is so incredibly distorted from where we are today versus where the language actually was. And I feel like the book that I've been reading lately has been radically shifting my ideas around all this. I don't know if you've ever read any of Owen Barfield's work, but if you haven't,
I got his book right here.
Which
Ready
one?
to go. Saving the Apprentice.
Yeah, I've been reading that one for a quick minute now, and it's pretty. I think it's what you need, honestly. Like, because once if you can truly understand, well, I don't want to say understand. If you can truly start to accept some of the things that he's saying, I think it should radically shift the way you read the Bible. At least it's starting to for me.
Nice.
Yeah. Because it just goes.
Yeah, I'm glad I have it on my.
Yeah, it's a good one. It really is. Because it just makes you challenged.
Yeah,
Like we use this language all the time, but how much do we know about it? Right? You get these little stories of like, what's the origin of language? Oh, it's these little cave people grunting and making silly little sounds, and it's like, is that true? I don't know that's true. I'm not sure that it is at all. And especially if I'm going to be a biblically minded person, I can almost guarantee it's not true. And so language is actually far more powerful and far more interesting than you ever could imagine. And that's part of the divorce from the scientific and the beauty concept, right? It's in the very science. I call it, science is the great namer of things. That's what it does. Like at the end of the day, that's what science does. It names something, right?
Categorizes.
Yeah. Oh, gravity. Yeah, but gravity is just a word, okay? It isn't actually the thing that you've named it. And the problem is science names things incorrectly because it doesn't know what a name actually is.
Because you think you understand it because you put a word on it, but you don't know the purpose underneath it. What is gravity doing? What's the purpose of gravity?
Yeah, yes.
Which I've heard recently that it's love, really. Love is what's holding together humans to the earth.
Yeah, I mean,
and love is pulling us.
Yeah. Here's another one, light.
Which is,
it's like, holy smokes. Yeah.
And to make it scientific is it's to keep it on the superficial level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to not dig deeper. Because light to me has nothing to do, like, I'm not thinking about how the eye works and
Right.
receives the light, and how the brain flips it and all that. I'm thinking of I'm thinking of like coming out of darkness,
Mm.
and it's bringing in new surprises from out of nowhere. That's what I think of light. Like and that's a much. So to think of the purpose of something is better than to just name it and to think you got it. Like you figured out, oh, that's an
Well,
atom.
well, and there's
It
something
does this.
about
It does
well,
this.
yeah, there's something about naming things. Naming things is sacred. It's the first job Adam has is to name everything. Why is that? Because there's something sacred about names. Something we've lost. Like we've lost it so radically, lost beyond belief. And I think that's kind of part of what Barfield's sort of getting at is
Mm.
that the complete disconnection that we've had from all these words that we use all the time and we think we know what they are, but we don't. We just use them. And then that divorce of like left brain, right brain, and all these sort of things, it just makes it even worse. It's so weird.
Yeah, yeah. It's like this. It's disconnected. The word is so. Adam names an animal. I assume the name is the purpose for which the animal was created.
I don't
I
know.
would think that would be the reason for naming it. Just to call it something a cow
Right? Yes.
and have it just be um like yeah. Like I get the point of naming something so that you can refer to it like kind of like a shortcut. So I'm not talking to you about okay, there's this four-legged mammal that gives you milk. So there is a purpose to an abstract, like I'm just going to put COW to this animal.
Right,
Let's
right.
go with it. But it feels like with the science, like the guy in the video, where it's or the comment, the refraction of light off water drops.
Yeah.
That's missing it. We're back to the superficial. It doesn't help. It just doesn't help.
No,
And
no, no.
that's maybe why I was attracted to Pajot, the symbolism that he brings in. That's
Right.
trying to give purpose
Yeah.
to all the things we look at, I guess, or the
Yeah.
images and
It's sort of here's the surface level, but what about all the deeper stuff, the really deep old stuff that we all know about, but we don't know why? It's that kind of stuff. Like, why do we know these things?
and the stories do this because they put everything
Mm-hmm.
in their place.
Yeah.
And the scientific word is kind of disconnected from the world because maybe that's the purpose, to separate it,
Could
kill
be.
it,
Yeah.
look at it, focus on it, and the story puts everything together, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe the Genesis story, you need the repenting God. You can't just separate the pieces out and it all works together. So maybe that's the beauty of the story. So I'm in process
Well,
on this.
yeah, and honestly, if you think about it, like the farther you go back, the deeper the compression is, the richer the story is.
Mm.
And there's something interesting about that too. It's like you go all the way back to the Genesis stories. They're really short. They're small, but you can,
Surprisingly, yeah.
yeah, but at the same time, there's so much there, and for these things to just have been invented is very odd.
Well, it's a cop out because it's really an oral, right? I have to assume it's like an oral tradition passed down generation to generation. But
Hmm.
that's going through like how many thousands to millions of people's like minds, and it's capturing something that stands the test of time, thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah,
Like the
and,
garden,
and
the Garden of Eden story. It's like, man, what about it is just capturing it?
right, right, exactly. And I mean, you got to read it 1,000 times, and you still won't really see it because I really do think that it is alive in a sense because it's somehow directly connected to God. I don't know how, but I do believe that it is.
Well, it's alive in every person, right?
Yeah, it's
So
different
you
for every
embody it
person.
and you live it out. You live. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that you
each of us are
almost.
living out the Garden of Eden story
Mm.
in some way.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, yeah, exactly. We're living out the fall too, right? I mean,
Living out the fall, we're realizing we're naked.
the
Oh shit, I
flood.
gotta
I mean,
cover myself. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's always a flood, and then we always got to build a boat, and it's like, do you know what you're
What's
gonna
the
put?
baptism?
Like, do you know what you're gonna put in your boat? Seriously, do you know that? Like, what are you gonna put in your boat, man? You know, it's like you start thinking about this kind of stuff. It's like, oh gosh, I'm not certain I'm as confident as I should be about such a question.
Mm.
I could pick the superficial stuff and tell you I'm going to grab my wife and my kids, you know, but like, how far do you go? How
That's a good
important is all this
exercise to,
stuff? Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Yeah. Some of those types of things will get you.
And then now I think of the baptism. Is that not a flood? Is that not a personal
Oh,
flood?
see, I never even thought of that.
I didn't
Never,
either until
I
you
never even
mentioned
thought
that.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
all
because you're,
connected, you know. Oh, here's a good one. I kind of it's really not connected, but it was just something that um, somebody had mentioned a different interpretation of something which I had never thought about before. I don't know why. Um, so, you know, Jesus is in the boat and he's with the disciples, and there's a great storm, and he's just like sitting there, calm as can be. Everybody's freaking out, you know, and it's like I can't remember all the details, but maybe at some other point, maybe I'm mixing stories up a little bit, but at one point in time, Jesus basically says something like, you know, the only sign you're going to get is the sign of Jonah. You heard this one, right? The sign of Jonah.
yeah,
Do you know what that means?
asking me.
Yeah. Like, what is the sign of Jonah when Jesus is talking about that?
I know that there's, so he he's in his own storm, right, on the boat. He's thrown over to placate God, and he's swallowed up by a big fish.
Yep.
And in there, he falls to the very bottom of the. I think he even uses the word Sheol. So
Yeah.
he's basically he's dead, or he's in the very bottom of
For
the
how many
world, I guess.
days?
3 days. Yeah,
3 days.
3 days. And so I know that the Jonah comes up later too in the Gospels. The
Well,
three he will yeah, he will die 3 days, and he will rebuild the temple in three
yeah.
days.
But it's just, I mean,
So he,
basically, he dies. He's reborn, or he's resurrected from death to life through Sheol, back to life, spit up on the shore.
yeah,
But you're told the cultural version of this whole thing, or you're supposed to. You know, it's like, oh yeah, he's swallowed by a fish. He's swimming around, living inside the belly of a whale for 3 days. Why would he use the word Sheol then? Right? It's like, and why would Jesus say
yeah.
the only sign you're going to get is a sign of Jonah? It's just like, it's those kind of little things that it's like, I don't know why I didn't hear it before. The first few times I went through it, I heard this guy say it. I was like, oh my gosh, it's so obvious to me. But like, do
And
I
we're
go?
busy, and I say me. What what I hear about Jonah, we're debating: was that a whale, or was that a great fish, or how can someone survive for 3 days? So I get the scientific debate,
Yeah,
which is missing
right.
the whole point you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. And that's where so much of the apologetics they'll get so hung up on that kind of garbage, and it's like, you didn't even read it. None of us
Hmm.
even read it. We didn't actually read what it was saying, or it wasn't speaking to us or something, you know, because we're
Hmm.
too busy worrying about how to defeat it or talk above it or aside, you know, beside it, and I'm twisting you to get on my side and all this garbage. And you know, it's your Bible, it's my Bible. it's the words of God. We have to somehow engage in it and figure out what he's trying to tell us.
So what do you think Jesus is telling, it's not maybe Peter, um, he's telling them to not worry. God has you. Even if you all die, look at the sign of Jonah. He'll resurrect you. Is that what he's getting at in that kind of short, like, because they know the stories of Jonah. And those are the kind of stories that are going around.
Well, I think it was something. I'd have to look, but I feel like he was actually talking to the Pharisees when he said it, because they
Oh,
were
okay,
asking
okay.
for a sign. Because they were basically saying, "Well, you show me a sign,
Yes.
and I'll believe in you." And he said, "The only sign you're going to get is the sign of Jonah." That's what he told them. And
Because if that sign's not going to get you, I'm not going to get to you.
right, exactly. Um,
Like, this is your story. You know the
yeah,
story.
yeah, you know the story.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He's
it's
doing,
wild, man.
and that's so I love that it's kind of fresh to you, because I can live through your wildness, because that's what I'm trying to recapture that.
Yeah.
Because I know all these stories. I know these stories, but I know it in a very
Oh my gosh, I could tell you
left
another
left
one.
brain way.
I could tell you another one that I read the other day.
Yeah.
You want to hear it?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I was actually, I don't do this often, and especially when I don't really care to say it out loud too frequently because I you know, I would say I asked God to tell me what to do next, in a sense. And in particular, I hadn't read scripture in a while, and I was sort of like, what am I supposed to read? And
Mm.
I just got a strange urge of, um, now I'm gonna forget it. Let me consult the Bible real quick. Um,
The
it's
Almighty
the
book.
Almighty. Um, I'm wanting to say it's Second Kings. I think it's Second Kings,
Oh,
but it could be First Kings. Pretty sure it's Second Kings though. Oh boy, now I'm looking like a total novice here, man. You know what? I'm not going to search through it all. Okay, I'm just going to tell you from
I could do a
my memory. Okay,
yeah.
because that'll be better anyways. It's like Second Kings 22. All right. Um, yeah, I think that's what it was. Elijah the prophet. He's with Elisha, his disciple, and
Yeah.
they are. Elijah's just about to ascend into heaven. Okay, and Elisha asks for the double portion of his spirit, and Elisha goes up. He is given the double spirit. He's also given the camel hide, which to me always connects him to John the Baptist, who also was sort
Yes.
of in that frame. So they're the prophets. Um, but anyways, so Elijah, he's got the garment of skin, okay, and he is now going to wherever he's going. I can't remember, but he's now the new prophet, okay, and
Mm.
he goes to the river. Once for the second time, he rolls it up. He smacks it on the river. It parts. Okay, he walks through the parted river, gets to the other side, and what does he find? 42 young kids waiting for him, mocking him.
Mm.
And he basically calls up to the Lord. I can't remember exactly what he says, but basically, two she bears come out of the woods and maul 42 children. It's a brutal sight,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's used quite frequently for people who are like, why would you believe this stuff? Um, as I started
Mm.
kind of like, why in the world would you tell me to go look at that one, right? To me, it just goes, well, there's just so many really weird things going on here that it's kind of hard to even focus on. It's like you're splitting the Jordan, so
Mm.
there's a division. So you've got 42 youths, children, whatever. It doesn't really matter all that much. The point is that they called him Baldy, right? And so this has like multiple meanings to it. Like they were basically saying like, you're not as good as Elijah. Like you're not the prophet. Like you don't because, and also something about like where they had come from. So basically, it's like there's some ties of like they were discrediting his name of being the next prophet, basically. And so then he calls out. It's like two bears, two she bears, mother bears. It's another pair. It's splitting. There's also some strange things in the Hebrew about like the forest of like where they come out of and a relation to honeycombs. And there's some weird connections about honey and bees and I don't know. There's just so much weird stuff going on. Like, why the hell are these kids out in the woods, anyways? And so I don't really have a point to all of this, other than it just was like one of these weird things that came up to me, of like, go wrestle with that, you know?
Go have fun with that one.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I look at a passage like that, and it's like, to just take it as being this quote unquote literal story, the scientific version of the story, I think is silly. That's not what it's telling me at all. Like there's so many layers, so much going on in this. You go the farther back, the stories get more compressed and more complicated. And there's just so much more going on in every single small story. And you want to just, today we want to take the surface level reading of everything. Oh, it says, bears came out of the woods and killed these kids. Why would God, why, God's bad. I mean, my goodness, if that's what we want to do, then we should just give up.
Yeah.
So there you go.
The reason that the story is kept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
why
there's not
would
much you can do with the literal?
No, you can't.
And so this reminds me. So part of my like researching, it was how the early fathers would read it too, and they would tend to spiritualize a lot of these readings, like the genocide things, and they would go that direction, which I find interesting. So if I take like maybe like Origin, for example, he would definitely spiritualize it, and he would give symbols to the bears, to the youth, to what Elisha, what everybody's doing, to kind of grab the deeper meanings of that story and not just sit on the literal, because he understands there's a literal meaning to that as well. Maybe don't make fun of a prophet.
Yeah,
I guess,
exactly. Yes, exactly.
But there's more to it than they could just tell us that.
Right.
But they gave us a story, a very graphic story. So, yeah. This is where it's kind of fun to wrestle, because I don't know what to make of that story either. This is not the thing that comes up in my Bible study or whatever, Sunday school. But these are the things I would love to like dig into.
Yeah, that one doesn't come up very often.
Like, what do you do with it? Yeah.
Right. But I don't know. I mean, it's like if you can start wrestling with that one, then you can wrestle with any of them.
Yes. I get that. Yeah, because now you're playing in a different world.
Right. Yeah.
Now you
exactly.
kind of knock down your literal world. And
yeah.
Let's get weird with it, and
right.
And so that, and I like about that is that you don't think you've figured out. You read the Bible all the way through, and you haven't figured it out. You've read the words, but you have not figured it out.
Well, what's so interesting, even about that very particular one, is if you read the commentaries on it, no one's figured it out. Not even the rabbis. Like, they all are very perplexed by that one. So to me, that one is in particular is very interesting. And like I said, it was like I kind of asked for God to tell me which one I should go look into. Like I said, I don't do this often. Like I very rarely will do such a thing. And it was like 2 Kings, boom. It just sort of hit me in a flash. And then I got to that verse 20, I was like, oh, it was so weird.
It's like, look for the sign of the honey bear. That's what
Yeah,
we're being
yeah.
told.
Right,
You have a
right, right.
question, and then that's the answer.
Yeah.
Your answer is another question, I guess. It's
Yeah.
like, maybe the scribes are looking for the easy answer, and
Hmm?
Jesus doesn't want to give them the easy answer. He wants them to wrestle. So
Well,
take
well,
the son of
because
Jonah.
yeah, there is no easy answer, right? I mean,
Mm,
yeah, to live is the answer, right? To believe every day, pick up the cross every single day, right? It's like believing and being a disciple of Christ is the most difficult thing you'll ever do in your life. For anybody who says it's a cop out and it's easy, I would argue they're doing it wrong. Because just labeling
mm.
yourself, naming yourself Christian, that's not it. At least for me, it isn't. It's an everyday
Oh, yeah.
struggle, an everyday wrestle. It's not easy. In fact, there's so many times where I'm like, I don't even know what I've done. I still don't understand it to this day.
You almost don't want to take on the name because it's just too
Uh,
scary.
well, I mean, unfortunately, the culture's really put their own spin on it, and so it's almost become something
Yeah.
different than what it really should be. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting though.
The word has a lot of baggage for sure. They will
Hmm.
assume a lot of things that they think they know about you, and that's why I
Yeah,
personally don't. I avoid the word. I wouldn't say I'm a Christian, but I'm very interested in Jesus and how he just transforms everything, including the Bible. Like the way you read the
yeah.
Old Testament and the Hebrew scriptures. Let me say, because I'm aware of Jacob and Hezi now too, and I want to say the Hebrew scriptures.
Fair enough. Yeah,
But
I
right,
fair enough.
I
See,
want to
that's
be
an
a little bit
honorable
safe,
thing
I
to do.
guess. And then, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because then when I call it the Old Testament, I'm kind of like above them, and I don't.
Mm.
They know a lot more about the Hebrew scripts. You could talk to them about the honey bear, and they would give you maybe a little bit more satisfying answer than I can.
Yeah, they might even tell me
Um,
I'm full of crap.
yeah, but yeah. So you were actually going into what I was thinking with to this transition into a scientific reading of the Bible into more embodied living,
Right. Right.
um, like in awe of the stories. Let the
Hmm.
stories transform you. Let them change you. Don't don't look above them as like an observer who is just going to glean you know the facts, and then I'm going to take those facts, separate them from the story, and live my life
Yeah.
as if
Yeah.
God is
It's not
omniscient.
like
He's omnipresent.
words on a page forming a sentence, forming a paragraph. It's not that at all. Right. It's something that just came to me was something like, let the stories read you. Whatever the hell that
Mm.
means. I don't really know, but
The Rorschach test is what I'm thinking.
hmm.
So what you read about the story says a lot about you,
Oh,
right?
like a mirror.
About your perspective. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, a mirror. Yeah.
Hmm. I like
And
that.
that's why I like having multiple views because
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
multiple views kind of gets you out of the little
Well,
box, I guess.
gosh, and this sort of, am I doing a double whammy? I'm telling you the other thing that God told me. um, as I can only probably say, like, I would say, yeah, these two things I'm pretty certain of. It was this was like just before becoming a Christian, like before accepting Christ. Uh, I heard this weird little phrase, and it was, "You cannot find something that's not hiding."
Hmm.
Because I felt like
Like
I
it's
had
not worth finding something
no, you
that's not
can't find
hiding.
something that's not hiding or that's not hidden. I felt like I had been searching my entire
Ah.
life for something, and it wasn't until I finally gave up looking did I find it. Because God is like
Hmm.
we are basically in God, like there's nothing outside of Him, and so you can't find Him because He's like we always think He's under a microscope or He's in this little double slit experiment over here,
Yeah.
but He's not. He's not hiding. all around us. We just are too dumb to see it.
Like hiding in plain sight, kind of
Hiding in
thing,
plain
maybe,
sight,
or
plain in no sight. And I don't even know what it means. It just was a
Hmm.
strange thing that came to me.
That makes me think of like the treasure that's hidden in a field. There's that kind of parable that just
Oh
talks
yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
It says the kingdom of God is like that treasure that's hidden.
Mm,
And then he also talks about to seek him, to knock on the door, and to
right,
seek and you'll find. Right? There's that
right,
kind of idea. Because not until you're open to it, and not until you're seeking, not until maybe you're giving up something else, maybe your ego, I don't know what it would be, then do you not start, things start popping up that you
right.
notice, I guess,
Yeah, yeah. You got to
that you didn't
break
notice
those
before.
barriers down, and yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
So you're kind of changing the way, maybe this is like a Vervaeke thing where, you know, about Vervaeke words, and you have this, I think it's called salience landscaping, where your perspective changes, so other things become more relevant to you.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
you
maybe it's, yeah,
well, your salience landscape is sort of like the totality of everything that you find important, and that's sort of like, that is what is salient to you, and that's what makes up your salience landscape. Relevance realization is like hand in hand with it, because it's just sort of like saying what you find relevant is what makes up constitutes your salience landscape. And the thing about us, which makes us so smart, is that it's actually our ability to ignore so much stuff that we're
yeah,
allowed to be able to even perform relevance realization in the first place. Because if you really look at like the science, and there's like a trillion things coming at you at every second, and somehow we're able to filter it
yeah.
down to like seven, you know.
Mm.
Um, but like with Vervaeke stuff goes, to me, I kind of think a lot about the 4P stuff. Are you familiar with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard it kind
Like
of briefly. Yeah.
yeah, well, we spend a whole lot of time in the propositional, right? That's sort of like the
Yes.
culture. The
Yes.
culture says this, the culture says that, and it's just it's some fact, right? That's kind of how I take it, at least. And really, what we should
This is the
be,
landscape.
well,
Yeah.
it's like the cultural landscape. Even it's the it's everybody's collective associations salience landscape, right? That's the propositional. But what we really should try and focus more on is a perspectival, your perspective, your POV of
Mm.
life, right? Because that's more true than the propositional. Because gravity, like how gravity's propositional, right? Um, whereas like things falling is perspectival, something like
Mm.
that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even then, I
Yeah.
still don't even think too much about it either, because then once again, I'm sort of like I'm doing the procedural, which is trying to put a process to the way that I'm thinking and embodying in the world.
And repentance, let me put like a religious Christian word, repentance, which is just a like, changing of the perspective. That's what that is. So
Yeah,
once you put your perspective on the other thing, now how you see the whole world kind of transforms.
yes, it should.
While the world while the world was still doing its thing,
Right.
but your world transformed. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's somewhat also back to like don't be of the world, right? Like to be of the world is to be in that propositional space, right? Because that's sort of what
Which
the
is a
world's.
which is a lack of purpose. It's almost like
Yeah,
a living on
yeah.
distractions.
Mm-hmm.
Like it lives on entertainment, on up to minute endorphin hits from video games, social media, etc.
Right.
And it's just it's almost like you're almost like medicated, and you're almost once you break out of it, you're like, you start thinking about, why am I doing this? Why would I go this direction? Like, so you mentioned your story with you kind of, I don't know if I could say you maybe went into a dead end because you were drinking and you were doing the thing, and then it was like this cycle thing is repeating and repeating. And I had the same thing with video games and
Mm,
politics, for example.
okay.
And I
Yeah.
was just like doing this. And at some point, I'm like, is this it? Is this where this is all going? I mean, there's got to be something else to it.
Right. Right.
And Christianity was the closest meaning maker that I had at hand. So
Mm,
this is a 15-year phase,
okay. Yeah.
up until the last few years. Um, so I know, like, to live nihilistically and to live kind of medicated, basically
Mm,
from distraction to distraction. So I don't have to think about like deeper things. I know that pattern, I guess.
yeah. It'll get you.
So that, yeah. So the kind of, you're talking about the culture, the world now, and where people are coming here is like they lose that purpose. There's that, what, the meaning crisis, I guess.
Well, it's lost its saltiness, right?
Mm.
It was once tasty and delicious, and but you can only have so much of it before it just becomes, it's just not salty anymore, and you can't put the salt back in it, right? You can't. It just, you can try to find a new
Yeah.
a new thing, but it's like you can't do it, man. And then once you taste that, I don't know, whatever, we'll go living water, right? Once you get the living water, you're
Mm.
like, oh, all of that other stuff was, that it was useless. You're thirsty.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Now it's like, why would I want to do that
Mm,
kind of thing?
yeah,
Why would I waste my time with that?
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Because now I'm always, it's like now I'm thinking of fruit, and actually, it's like I said earlier, it's just sort of like one of the things that I know that I struggled with for the longest time, and I still struggle with it to this day. I'm not even remotely close to where I should be, but it's just like when in the scripture when it talks about people having a hardened heart, like I 100% was the embodiment of that. I mean, even people that called me
mhm.
close friends, they would tell you like I was the coldest person they've ever met in their life. And like I even just like talking, like I very rarely talk to people on the phone. Like I don't have a lot of friends even. I just would not, I don't know. And so that's like major change um since finding Christ and putting Christ in my life, is that I'm recognizing of like it life is about trying just, trying to love others, and and it's like
Yeah,
I don't know, it's so difficult for me to even put words to, but I'm trying.
yeah, because it's beautiful. Because it's
I'm
beautiful.
trying, man. I'm trying. I'm
Yeah.
going out there.
No, I get what you're saying, because I have the same kind of, I have a hard time with um making and keeping friends. I was a yeah. I mean, I'm just naturally introverted, and I process internally, and I'm drowning in words, basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have an
So
entire conversation
part of me,
before you ever say
yeah.
it. Yeah,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I had like,
yeah.
before meeting you, I had debates in my head, and not debates. I wouldn't say debate. I would say different people arguing and saying, "Hey, what about this? Oh no, but what about this thing? What about this thing?" And
Yep.
so there's just um, my old way. There's a guy there that represents my old way. There's a new guy and we're like debating each other, and we're trying to integrate the two people. And um, so yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, it's
And
funny.
I have this script.
Oh, you got a script, yeah? See,
Well,
I actually
I had a
record
lot of ideas written down.
mornings when I drive to work. I've been having a habit of like recording myself, just sort of monologuing my thoughts out loud. And I basically did the same thing this morning of trying to have a scenarioed version of what this conversation was going to be like. So it's very funny
Okay,
that
so
you said all
this
that.
is good because this
No, I can't. I can tell you
is
this: it hasn't
so
gone anything at all like I thought it was going to.
yeah, me either. I didn't think we would. No, I'm really happy where it went, to be honest. Because I had, you have the plan, and I have the ideas written down of what I want to talk about, but I need to let go of control, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point of talking to somebody else who
Right.
will bounce off their own story and their own idea and their own critique. It could be good and bad and like helpful, I guess. So I don't care about the notes anymore. I just want to know more about, you know,
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
and just go on whatever path
So
flows.
so what I've one of the guys I've listened to in the past for a while now, um, he's a hypnotist. His name is Mike Mandel. But one of the things he always talks about, he calls it a psychodynamic loop, and so
Mm.
that's sort of what it is, right? It's like we we get in rapport, right? We're in rapport, and so it's like I talk, you listen, you talk, I listen, and then we just start looping in this psychodynamic exchange, and that's just sort of like what a really good conversation is.
Right. And it's not one person trying to dominate, like with an argument, let's say, like they came
Mm-mm.
in to debate something
Right,
and, or even evangelize, because I know proselytizing, that's been kind of a recent thing on Grill Country. And you're coming into a conversation with like kind of ways to control it,
right, right.
with your ideas, with your plans. And the
Mm-hmm.
spirit, I love this idea of the spirit kind of goes where it wants. You
Mm-hmm.
don't know where it's going, just kind of go with it. And I like that because you're releasing control.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier, don't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a burden lifted for sure.
Well, yeah, because it's
Because
so
I used
funny.
to have, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking about just like the way in which we first talked, right? Of like, oh, we're gonna talk about this, we're talking about this, talk about this, and I was just thinking to myself earlier, I'm like, how the hell am I gonna connect all those different things together? Like, what kind of conversation is that gonna be? You know?
I wanted to give you a little heads up just to kind of get a little flavor because I don't want to hit you cold. That was the point of the
Yeah, no, I know.
of that. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
And that's what
honestly,
I'm learning a lot from, like
yeah,
from Chad and from it's like very open ended. Like,
right, right. Well, yeah, and I think that's sort of, you know, what kind of spirit do I want to bring to all this? Like, I want to help you. If I can, I would love to help you in any way possible, and
yeah,
that would help me grow in my own spirit. If I can help you grow too, like that'd be amazing. And I'd love just sort of like that's what I sort of love to
oh yeah,
see what's happening all around, really.
yeah. That's the magic. You put the words on the magic for sure.
Right.
Yeah, it's the golden rule. It's yeah,
Mm,
yeah, all that stuff.
all that stuff, man.
I can't put words on it anymore, so
No, no, no,
I have
no.
to use very vague, mystical words and mysterious words about it. And
Oh
I kind of want
man.
to live in that world
Yeah.
more, that mysterious world. Yeah, the right brain world. Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to think like, is there any kind of um, exercise or something that could help, that could help, I don't know, spark that. You've been listening to Pajot stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I feel like
Because
that has helped me, to be
I think
honest. I
well, it's refreshing the stories for me and you,
hmm
because of the symbolism and the imagery. It's broken away from like my old upbringing of like this is the way to read it.
mm,
Usually literal, superficially,
yeah,
and
I
he kind of
gotcha.
goes down to the deeper layers. And man, it's so interesting that you bring up. So one of the things I want to talk about, like, how do I get to this? disembodied living way of reading the Bible is, and my word to it is practices.
Okay.
Because one of the things that has been helpful to me in kind of looking at the older tradition is that they have practices. They have prayer, they have fasting,
Right.
they have visual aids, I guess you could say. The smell aids, incense, for example. So I wanted to ask you, like, what kind of, these are some of the practices that have helped me. Okay, so one of my big problems with God is that I read about God a lot, but I don't know how to have a relationship with a human, with a person. So I'm very uncomfortable or awkward with prayer because I feel like I'm praying to myself and I don't hear anything else on the other end. So prayer
Yeah.
is very uncomfortable for me. Public prayer, personal prayer. So I've kind of I've gone to like the prayer book, right, which is like like a traditional way of like reading the prayers of the saints, right?
Okay.
The experts of prayer, um, the prayer scientists of their day, I guess. But they know what they can have. So that's I'm trying to find things that help me relate on a personal level to God. That's not so left brain. Like I just don't want to read about Jesus anymore. I want to, in not a corny way. I want to have a personal connection to Jesus. But I
Right.
don't know how to
Right.
do that with somebody that I can't talk to.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm doing that with you right now on some level. I
Well,
feel like I am.
I would make a strong argument that yes, this is because like one of the things I've thought a lot about, and this is sort of one of those, like you've heard this argument, right? Of like, well, why wouldn't God just snap his fingers and change everything? Right? Well,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, God chooses to work through people. Like this is how God works. He works through people. You run into people. They have been told certain things. They have amazing stories. Those stories change you.
Mm,
You have amazing stories that you tell others that change them. And um, this is just, from what I can tell, this is just how God chooses to work. Now, can he work in other ways? Absolutely. He can do whatever he wants. I think I would suspect, and I would probably argue, I'm in a similar boat. Like I would call it like my honeymoon phase has
mm,
went away. Okay, so
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm now into, maybe I do need to think more about like, hey, maybe you should look at some, because I'm interested in some of the traditional aspects too, of just like, can I
Mm,
incorporate some of these things into my own practices, maybe more on the side outside of the church, because I still very much see my personal connection to the church that I'm in as being like an agent for Jesus and helping more people get to know him. Um, so that's one. Like if you're not, I would argue, to me, like being a part of the church, like I'm in kids ministry. I've been a small group leader. I'm not currently now, but I do participate in them. I'm also one of our sort of like discipleship mentors. So I do like a one-on-one with a couple people, and I think that is
mm.
critical in my opinion of like not just attending the building, but like being a part of it. To me, is really just sort of like amped up my connection. Um, so that's one for sure. But yeah, I agree. Like prayer, like man, I feel silly sometimes. I
Yeah.
really do. I feel really silly. I feel
Oh, yeah.
fake, honestly, and I hate being. It's like
Yes.
I do not want to be disingenuous. In fact, that's like one of the things I always think about in Ecclesiastes, where it's like, do not pray for something that you are not going to keep right then and there. Like, don't even pray it. Like, don't ask for
Not
stuff
going
if
to
you.
keep.
Yes. Like, oh, I'll do this if it. I promise you, I'll give up smoking,
Uh,
and then if you just
Promises. Yeah.
and then you don't do it, it's like you do not do that to
Mm,
God. And so it really influenced me, of being like extremely careful about what I ask of God, even though I feel like I'm maybe learning now that that's probably not correct, but you still have to undo these things to a degree, you know? Yeah, I don't know, man.
I mean, it's
I
not
think
like you don't start with, "Hey, what's up?"
I do.
You know how
I do.
how I greet, "Okay, okay," because that's how I would,
Um,
greet anybody.
yeah, I don't know.
Maybe
I
start
kind of go both
casual.
ways. I go both ways. Sometimes I'm formal, sometimes I'm kind of pleading. Um, but it's certainly not. It's not. It's not somebody else's words most of the time. You know that. I,
Mm,
I think maybe that can give you structure, but I think at some point you do have to somewhat make it your own voice a little bit. I've heard frequently like go read the Psalms. If you want to learn how to pray, go read the Psalms.
yes, that's
Right?
very
Like
popular in yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. That's something my
that.
church is doing like every once a week. Yeah, yeah. Just praying the Psalms is what they call it.
Yeah.
Um,
And honestly, I
and
think the
that's definitely
biggest thing
embodied.
though, the biggest thing is if you can talk to more people too, right? Because I think the spirit's working through us right now, to be honest. Because it's just like I don't know, I feel energized. I don't know about you, but I certainly um
Yes, yes.
just even the type of conversation we're having, it's uplifting. So um like I know you had the one conversation with Neil, but if you can, if you can get other conversations too, I think it certainly won't hurt. You know, it could help.
Very helpful,
I'm
yeah.
not gonna, I wouldn't say like it's a, you know what I mean? Like it will work, I guarantee it, but it won't hurt.
Well, you'll be affected in ways you don't even know yet. I think
Right?
probably a lot
Yeah.
of that.
And then don't I would, whatever. I'll be a heretic here. Don't be afraid to like read some books that are just completely out of the blue that you wouldn't normally read, especially in alignment with whatever denomination you're currently seeing yourself in. Because, like, for instance, like one of the books that like helped me in the very beginning to have a radical shift in the way that I read the Bible was a book by Rob Bell. There's a
Yeah, I've
book,
read Rob Bell.
the
Yeah, yeah.
book How to Read the Bible. Yeah,
Ah, I know about that. That was so close to getting it, but there's like 20 books competing.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, yeah, very interesting. I
But
know he
that
did a podcast, or he did was really interesting about that.
that one just had some stuff in it that just sort of made you go, huh, that certainly is a different way of reading all that.
Rob Bell is a big part of my hell story for sure because he wrote another book that kind of opened the door.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, I
so I
don't know
know
what
Rob Bell. Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot about him. Um, but that book I did read,
Yeah.
and I just thought it was very interesting the way he was able to, I don't know, just I don't know, put new language or new ways of looking at the scripture, and it just sort of made me be able to look at the same story and go, hmm. Another one that comes to mind is sorry. Um in the beginning I was I had looked up a few rabbis because I found it
Mm,
interesting the way that they would talk about the Hebrew scripture. Um,
yeah.
and, and one of the phrases that they used was this, and it could be wrong, but this is what I remember. It was just they called it like turning the jewel or like the 72 faces of the jewel or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. I've
Yeah,
heard that.
and so like, and
Yeah.
they would like take the same passage and they would like I don't know. They like reinterpreted it like 72 times, the same exact thing, but
Yeah.
And so it's just like a combination of little things like that just really has sort of, at least for me, just transformed the way I approach the Bible. And then coming at it with the concept of, I think it's alive.
Yes, yeah. Because I've heard that, the Bible is alive,
Mm-hmm.
but the words just didn't land.
Yeah.
The word doesn't land until something else changes. Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
changing your translation? Have you tried that?
Yeah. That's been
Yeah.
helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. That's been really helpful to like change the words up, like change the Lord's Prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And because I see a translation as another interpretation, another almost like a commentary.
Yeah.
Because I used to think, obviously the old way is one word is exactly the same as English to Greek, and it's King James only. And I used to think that way, but no, that has helped for sure. Getting another translation. Yeah.
Which one do you use now?
Digging. I use a David Bentley Hart translation, which
Never heard of it.
he's pretty popular around these parts.
Okay.
He's popular in the Grail Country world. He's come up a few times here and there. He's like he's like a sassy scholar. Let me put it.
Yeah, no, I've heard of him,
but he has.
I can't say I've, done. I haven't investigated him much though.
Yeah. But he did a New Testament, which is really, really cool. He gives his reasons for why he translates the way he does, and the new words kind of like bring new life. Like, whoa, it's like a strangeness to it, or a surprise. So it's kind of finding ways to freshen it up again, to what I've just been hearing forever.
Right. Yeah, I read the ESV. I read the ESV version. I like it. I try. I'm trying to stick with one just because I don't know. I guess I want to. At least I tell myself like I want to commit some of these verses to memory. But I almost feel it's like, can you ever really do that? Are you really like, what are you committing to memory at that point? It's not actually the words. So you really only can kind of like commit to memory the core idea and concept of what's trying to be communicated to you. So I didn't even think of that till just now.
That's how I do it now too, because that's exactly how I do it. And then I'll Google it. If I really want to find the verse, I'll just Google it.
You know what? Another thing that I just really thought of, something I just thought about. An exchange like this really could afford us something interesting that I don't personally get to do very often, but maybe in the future I think we should try it out. Is one of the best ways, this comes back to storytelling. Like you brought up storytelling. That's sort of been a whole nother thing that I've been like extremely interested in, particularly like I've been listening to a lot of Martin Shaw and just sort of like the mythology and these sort of things. And so that's sort of like really kind of floating around in my mind a whole lot. But like one of the things about it is you have to tell the stories, right? You don't just read the damn thing, you tell them. And that's when you know them, right? And you start to kind of put your own in your own words. And yeah, it may not be exactly the same, but like maybe we could pick like a parable or something like that and just sort of like tell the story, tell the story back in your own words. And that,
because you're compressing it. It. That's something that I can take with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people were not reading books to each other when they were cavemen, right? Or let's say primitive compared to us, or before they were literate. They were talking to each other, right?
Right.
It was over a fire and under the stars. So there's something you can't capture. There's something in the book that just stays in the book.
Yeah,
you have to bring it out in a
you
dialogue.
You miss the characterization. You miss the tonality, the emphasis, the non-emphasis. It's just such a different way of being able to tell the story, even just some of the most basic ones. I don't know. There might be something really interesting there. It's something you wouldn't normally do. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't normally do that.
Yeah.
And neither would I, because
I'm
I'm not
reading,
a pastor.
Yeah. Yeah. I would usually be reading a book right now, probably.
Would you do that if we talked again? Like you pick one parable and then you would tell it. I'll pick a different one.
Yeah. Oh, because what I was thinking, I just lost it. Because I feel like I would remember better our conversation and the nuggets versus thousands of pages of a theological book.
Right. Yeah.
Because when you vocalize something, you're really picking something. You're really focusing on something. There's a reason you're saying it. You're forcing yourself, I guess, to pick out from all the thousands of words.
Yeah. Well, you're trying to communicate it to someone else, right? You're not just even telling the story anymore.
Different part of the brain.
Right. You're
just receiving it.
Ooh.
Yeah. And not just I'm not just receiving the words and then I'm giving it to you, but now you're bouncing it back to me. So there's that second, I guess, loop, maybe. Yeah. Because now I'm just kind of riffing. No, I'm not going off any script. I'm just going off the top of my head and maybe with the spirit. Maybe it's like a spirit thing.
Yeah.
So
well, I'm very allowing the spirit, right?
Yeah. Because I feel like a fraud if I say a lot of these Christian things, Christian phrases that I've not embodied yet. That is just in the head right now. But I use the language. I use Christian language because that's the language I know. Those are the words I can use, and I'm always trying to put like another spin on it, like my own word on it. But sometimes, like moving to and fro, I don't know what else to call it but a spirit, but the wind.
Yeah. Oh, the wind. I like that.
Because these are some of like the most basic images, the most rudimentary symbols, and that's what I love about what Pajot's doing in the symbolism. It's like it's getting to the very, like the core of all humanity. This is what we can all.
Well, and these are some of the base things that I still struggle with so much. Honestly, is like, what the hell are we talking about when we say spirit and soul? For me personally, like I didn't grow up with all these words other than from a cultural perspective. And so now I'm in this whole different world. I don't want to say literally. I'm in a whole new world in actuality. And so these phrases are taking on a whole new, I don't know. They're just, I'm looking at them with fresh eyes. And so I'm trying to see them for what they really are supposed to be. It's difficult.
Yeah. I mean, your language is being transformed in real time. Yeah.
Well, and the language that we have is so polluted. And you have to even understand, do you understand the language that you're really using? And I think that's sort of something I'm coming to grips with right now. And that's where that Barfield book really starts to kick you hard, is when you start to go, well, damn, how well do I know the language that I'm using every single day? And I think it'll surprise you that you probably don't know it as well as you think you do.
And that's what I'm realizing with, like, I know the Christian words, I know the Christian language, but I don't know beneath it.
Well, it's
really.
I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but it sounds as though you know the cultural version of it, of the language, but it sounds like you're questioning it at all because you don't really understand it because it's not really your language. Or maybe you're trying to make it your own, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why it's like I want your words, the words you used to use, right? It's like a bridge to the next, to your, I guess, the transformation of the new language. And so having that, this is the point of another perspective, is you get new words that also I think should be integrated in some way.
Mm.
So how would you talk about these things? Would it be just too mumbo jumbo for you back before? Because I know you were searching out new age kind of things and like all kinds of spiritual.
Yeah, I mean,
If I remember right.
I certainly had like a strong interest in like a lot of the occult, right? I was very interested in the occult.
Because I would love to talk to you
Um,
more about that. That's like mystical stuff, right?
yeah, well, I mean, I guess the problem though is that it was all empty and hollow and it didn't produce any fruit. And it ultimately just left me in just a
Mm,
dark nihilistic place of like all this stuff didn't do anything. Right? It had all these promises. People talk about all these damn energies and vibes and frequencies and, I don't know, do this chant or whatever. And, while I still probably had so much of this rational, the rational sort of like, stuff doesn't work, all that kind of business going on. But I don't know, after sort of like exploring these things for years and years and years and years, and they never would sort of produce the results I was looking for. Like I was always looking for something, you know.
mm.
I was always trying to become better,
What were you looking?
right?
What were you looking for?
Well, that was the problem. I could never
I
figure
mean,
that out.
I assume I assume on one level you're looking for, like, you do a practice like a chant because you want to get something, right? You want to get a promotion or whatever.
Mhm.
And and maybe you get it, maybe you don't. I mean, were you looking at it very practically, like it's not giving me, or maybe it gave you what you wanted, and then you realized, oh no, this is not what I want.
Yeah,
Like, I'm very curious about this.
yeah. I don't know. It's hard to, just like this stuff happened over a 20 year span or whatever. There was just so many, so many waves of it that it's really difficult to kind of think about like, well, when did one phase of it end and begin? And um, I had to put some serious thought to it. Um, so much of it's really hard to remember. Hard to
Mm,
remember because really the going up into just before like whatever when I was 36 and it's just I don't know, like I'm trying to think. It must have been the 6 years prior to that. It just was all very. I had kind of exhausted it all. It just whatever I was looking for, I didn't find it, and I kind of got to a point where I was like, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with just not
mm,
having whatever it's supposed to be. Um, but I've got kids, and so that just kept bugging me
mm.
a lot. And
Yeah.
now it all just seems like so brutally clear to me of like, well, God was working through my life and whatever, bringing me to place. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to think about, to
I
be
mean, not
honest
until
with
you
you.
have the light. Not until you have the light, you're just grow up. You're in darkness, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't
But
even.
maybe I can ask this.
Yeah.
Let me ask this. Maybe this, because I care about asking questions more, maybe more so than the answer. Because
Hmm.
the question to me is how it frames everything. It's like maybe okay. I hope I have a good question. What does Jesus give you that the occult doesn't give you? I guess is the or
Well, I mean,
yeah.
um, I guess, what and I'll put in a caveat of the moment I truly believed, like I put like absolute faith, absolute belief in him. Um, I can almost just describe it as like my entire world just transformed in a lifting. Like I almost felt like a physical weight lifted off of my body, and I wasn't alone, and I didn't have to do everything by myself anymore. Not saying that I still haven't been trying to. I certainly have. So just like a lifting, like a massive lift off my shoulders, and like an immediate empathy towards others, like almost happened immediately. Like that, like some of the whatever the coldness of my heart sort of just shifted at that very moment. And then it just even made it even more profound because I just knew. Not only did I know because I, whatever, I'll call it some kind of physical, mystical experience, like an actual physical sensation that is really hard to describe. And so after denying it 4 times, it was like, whatever, on the 4th time, I just was like, okay, I'm done. I can't, I'm accepting it. And then it just was like, whoosh, like it's difficult to explain. And ever since that moment, I have been on just like, I call it like a roller coaster. Like I have not stopped trying to like almost figure out what happened and just growing in it and growing in it and growing in it as I just keep going farther along. And I hear more and more stories. And really, to me, the stories are what gets me most. Like that's just like it's like compounding interest. It's just sort of like it just amplifies it every single time I run into another person who I know has been transformed through Jesus. Like he has done that in their life. He's done exactly what he says he's going to do. I will transform you. Boom. And it happens. And it happens. And it happens. And it happens. I can't even tell you how many people I now know that that's exactly the same thing that's happened to them. And if they all want to call it BS, that's fine by me. I don't really care. In the sense of like I mean, the other of people who still question it. I would certainly love to help you get there, right? Not you, but I would just be like,
it's like you can't see what you don't.
You can't find something that's not hiding.
You can't see what you don't see.
Exactly.
It's at some point there's no debating it. It's just
right, and it's not something it's not even something I have to explain. I don't have to explain it. It doesn't really matter,
right?
Because whatever I say, it won't until you kind of experience it and know it. It's almost indescribable, really. Now, I know not everybody's going to have that same kind of experience, and so some people will have to be the ones that trust without the signs. And you know what? Jesus will love them even more than the ones that get the sign.
Yeah. And I know what you're saying. Like you don't have to say the words because I know it. Like I've experienced it recently, like pretty recently. In the last few months, I would say. So this is kind of yeah. So yeah, I know. Yeah. It's like, you're in life now, you both can see things, and you just point to that thing that has no words, and like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But the person who's in the dark, or like, what are you pointing at? I don't see anything. It's that kind of thing. It's just no words.
Yeah.
There's just no words.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're getting to like what God is about. God is wordless, right? It's like that ineffable thing.
Yeah.
That's maybe what the experience is. That's what that relationship is. It's that almost, it's like beyond words kind of thing. So with like, how, maybe what do you think about this? I don't know how to love God, but maybe if I love others, that's my way to love God. Like, how do I love an invisible being? Right.
Well,
maybe I can, it relates to the relationship question too.
I mean, I think one, it's, I would almost start to argue of like, let me pull out a lightsaber here. Well, what do you mean when you say love? Right? Like, what are you trying to, what are you even saying?
How do I commune at the deepest, how do I experience or relate to God beyond words.
Well, and I
Maybe
think that, at least for me, because okay, I I don't want to say I know what you're talking about, but I believe I have a similar sensation of what you're talking about. Okay, um, and I'm still working on it myself. Of like because like you pray and you want to like hear the voice of God talk back to you. Okay, but at the same time, I absolutely do not want to hear that. Okay, I don't want to hear it. Like it's scary, it
mm,
terrifies me. Okay, so there's still a part of me that's like, do I really, really, really
mm,
want to hear that? And to be brutally honest, the answer is absolutely no. Just like I don't want to see angels and I don't want to see demons, I don't want to see any of it. Even though it's like, oh, that make me such a better believer. But like I've got all these like
yeah,
there's all these internal structures that are preventing me from being just like wide open, fully unrestricted flow to God. And that's kind of what it takes, man. It's like you can't look at God, right? You can't even see his reflection, right? Like you can't even like peer around the burning bush or around the rock or whatever it is. Like you'll go blind. It's like, yeah, it's
yeah,
hard to love that, right? But it's like that's the creator of
mm,
all that is, and it's I think that's what makes it. That's where Jesus comes in for me, right? Because
yeah,
Jesus is the human embodiment of God. And that's what you love. Once you love Jesus, you're loving God. Because you look at what he's done and you see how
yeah,
he interacts with people. And that's how God
mm,
interacts with
yeah.
people. But, when it's, yeah, I don't know.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a good path. Because yeah,
Because, I mean, if you're honest,
and then
like,
he
do
says,
you really want to hear it, man? Like, seriously. You may think you do, but like, do you
yeah,
really
it's gonna be something I
absolutely
don't want
want
to
to
hear.
hear?
Yeah, it's gonna be something challenging. I for sure, something I don't want to look at.
Or maybe you
I
do. I
mean,
don't
there's
know.
this. There's this. I mean, there's a story of that, right? The saints that go out in the desert,
Yeah.
and yeah, they have a communication with God, but they're also they're fighting demons in those stories. I don't know too
Hmm.
well, but I don't know if I
Yeah.
want to wrestle with demons.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Um,
like, how far do you want to go in this game, right? It's like, um, ignorance is bliss to a degree,
yeah,
right? Um,
yeah,
yeah. So that's kind of some of the stuff I sort of think about,
okay.
really. Because yeah, so caught up in that, like, oh man, why ain't you talking to me, God? Right? Like I'll say something stupid like that.
Mm,
Not saying you're stupid. I'm just, but then I'll play the same game with myself and go, do you really want that? Like, because you're probably okay. Here, I'll give you an example. So one of them is Jesus says something like, if you have just the amount of faith to seed, you can basically look at that mountain and say, move from here to there and throw it in the ocean. Okay.
mm,
Um, so I look at something like that and it's like, well, why can't I do that? Right. I
yeah.
look at the mountain and I'm like, go. Right. It's just like, it just sort of makes me go like, do you really want to move the mountain? Are you sure? Um, I don't know.
Mm.
I don't even know what I'm saying anymore.
It's like to be careful what you ask for. Like the greater power you're given, the greater your the risk and the greater the reward. Um,
Yeah, it's like
and by power, I mean, yeah.
well, it's like if you don't believe earthly things, why would I give you the spiritual things?
Mm,
And it's all there. It's like it's the same stories. You've read them 1,000 times.
yeah. And then I think maybe he speaks to you in other ways through his
Hmm.
creation
Yeah, yeah.
if you're willing to listen.
Yeah, it challenge your very conception of like what is talking, what is speaking, what is listening, what are the words, what are we saying when we say he is the word? Like what is a word? We don't even know what a word is. I would argue we don't even know what a word is.
Yeah, because you get down to such a level that it's at the core of God, right? So and we can't get there.
Yeah.
It's like digging down into the atoms and getting deep, and I bet you there's more stuff down there.
Yeah, I mean, is there a bottom? Like will he give you a bottom? And I don't think he will.
I don't want a bottom because this is what I
Well,
used to have this old idea about heaven, where it would be
yeah.
kind of boring, right? If you figured everything out.
Mm,
It's like, no, that can't be right. It has to be always a new surprise. So,
mm,
like in heaven, we're going to be like, we figured you out, God. We figured you out. And he's like, well, what about
mm,
this? And then we're all going to go
yeah.
back to our whatever mansions, and we're going to be exploring this new concept of God, and we're not going to be bored. Is basically what
Well,
I'm
and
thinking.
it comes full circle right back to the double rainbow guy. You know,
Mm.
it's just like just experience life right now. Quit thinking about
And
it.
cry, just cry.
Just
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
see the beauty in it all. Like that's God speaking just as much as anything else.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. He
Hey,
my he is speaking through that because scientifically, it's just a refraction of
I
do,
know, right?
but it's a sign of something. Yeah.
Well, we got about 9 minutes left on the recording here, so we should probably wrap it up. So we got a nice, good, clean ending on this one for
Yes.
the recording, at least.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Oh, you
I
wrap
mean,
it
to
up
be honest,
nicely.
yeah, this was a really great conversation. I really enjoyed it a lot. Um,
Yeah, I
I
did too. Yeah.
yeah, and it was surprising. It was completely different than I thought it was going to be. So it was really good.
Hmm. I had a little bit of a head start because I got to see you in some videos, right? And I got to
Hmm.
prepare myself better.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so now I'm not such a mystery. Not just
Well,
some words on a.
and I mean this space that we're in, and you know, which I think is kind of odd to a degree. I mean, it takes a certain kind of person to do it, but it's like I think we're being honest, and we're not playing the game, right? We're not playing the YouTube game, for
No, no.
instance. We're doing something. We're just trying to be, I don't know, like I'm trying to help you, you're trying to help me, and we're participating in this community. It's just I don't know, it's interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but
And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I would love to
And
talk to you again for sure.
yes.
Um,
Yes.
maybe I got some ideas. I think it'd be really cool to flip around doing some actual like sort of storytelling bits. I think that'd be really cool. I'm sure there's plenty of other topics we could come up with.